Imagine a law so strict that even your shadow is considered like a biological hazard.
Right.
A system where drawing water from the wrong well isn't just a faux pas, it's treated as a crime against the cosmos. We often think of historical barriers as, physical things, walls of stone, iron bars.
But the most impenetrable boundaries are usually the invisible ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because when a barrier is constructed out of deeply ingrained cultural and religious beliefs, it, well, it kind of polices itself.
Yeah.
It dictates where you can walk, who you can look at, and even the fundamental value of your own physical body.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are super thrilled to have you with us today as we unpack this really profound stack of sources. We're looking at a collection of academic journals, historical analyses, and modern sociological reports.
And our mission today is to explore the historical intersection of Christian missionaries and Dalits in India.
Right, we're going to examine how the arrival of these missionaries, starting way back with the Portuguese in the 16th century and expanding heavily under British rule, basically collided with that invisible wall.
And to really understand the magnitude of that collision, we first need to look at the historical context the sources give us. We have to define who the Dalits were in the traditional framework of the Indian subcontinent.
Which is pretty complex, right?
It is. Dalits represent an incredibly diverse population of groups across South Asia who were systematically excluded from the four-tier caste system. In this traditional structure, your social and spiritual status was inextricably linked to your ancestral occupation.
And the occupations forced upon Dalits were the ones involving what the dominant castes defined as ritual impurity. So we were talking about leatherwork, handling animal carcasses, butchering, and the manual cleaning of human waste and sewers.
Exactly. The mechanism of the caste system dictated that because of these occupations, the people performing them were inherently polluted. And this is a really crucial distinction to make. This wasn't just a severe class divide based on wealth.
Right, it was baked into the religion.
Yeah, it was religiously sanctioned framework. The stigma of pollution was hereditary and inescapable. Under this framework, they were deemed untouchable.
Which really sets the stage for our exploration today. We're going to analyze how Christian missionaries intervened in this system, altering the day-to-day social, educational, and legal realities for Dalits.
But we're also going to look at the limitations of that intervention. Specifically, the incredibly complex, lingering shadow of caste that persists today.
But before we look at the sweeping systemic shifts, we kind of have to ground this in geography and, well, the human body. Because historically, the requirement for ritual purity meant Dalits were physically exiled from the main village.
Right, they were forced to live in segregated thatched-roof ghettos, often referred to as a palem or a cherry.
The physical distance was maintained to prevent even accidental contact. The main village populations avoided the Pelem entirely, treating it like a quarantine zone.
Right.
But then the European missionaries arrived, and the immediate culture shock wasn't just about theology, it was about this contact zone. For the first time, outsiders were willingly crossing that geographical boundary and walking into the Pelem.
You really have to consider the perceived status of these missionaries from the perspective of the local populations. Historical texts note they are sometimes viewed almost as white angels.
Wow.
And this wasn't merely religious reverence, it was highly political. They were inextricably associated with the British Empire, which was the supreme ruling power.
So that association fundamentally altered the power dynamic. When they walked into the Pelem, they weren't just travelers, they were representatives of an entirely different global order.
Exactly. And many of these missionaries had been influenced by the Enlightenment and global anti-slavery movements. So when they witnessed the conditions of the Pelem, their theological worldview, specifically the belief in the inherent equality of all humans, it compelled them to physically engage.
Which brings us to this concept the sources focus heavily on: the touchable body. Just the simple act of missionary extending a hand to shake or sitting shoulder to shoulder with a Dalit person.
It was a radical disruption of the purity and pollution binary. It restored a baseline human dignity that had been structurally denied for centuries.
It's like short-circuiting a centuries-old social force field. If you're told your whole life that your physical form is a contaminant, and then a person wielding immense perceived global authority enters your home and intentionally touches you, the psychological impact of that is just massive.
It's unquantifiable.
Yeah.
And this physical validation extended directly into one of the most heavily policed activities in the caste system.
Eating.
Yes, commensality or the practice of interdining. Sharing a meal across caste lines was strictly prohibited. The underlying belief was that sharing food, or eating food prepared by someone of a lower caste, transferred their ritual pollution directly into your body.
Wow.
So by intentionally breaking this taboo, missionaries were attacking the very foundation of the caste hierarchy.
The diaries and accounts in our sources give us such incredible windows into this. Take missionary Todman in the Cuddapah region. During his village tours, he would sit down on the bare earth with newly baptized Dalit families. And he'd eat meals with his bare hands, sharing the same space and the same food. Or Dorothea Smith in Anantapur, sitting on a simple mat inside a Dalit home, sharing a meal while discussing the Bible.
The message sent by consuming food prepared by Dalits served on their vessels was unmistakable to the surrounding dominant castes. It essentially broadcasted, I am not polluted by these people, which means they are not inherently polluting.
Combine that physical action with the theological message being introduced. It shifts the narrative from, you are suffering due to karmic punishment from a past life to you are a child of God with equal intrinsic value.
Right.
But having your humanity recognized is only the first step. Once the missionaries established that human connection, empathy naturally demanded advocacy. They were now eyewitnesses to the daily atrocities.
It forced a transition from just being a spiritual presence to active physical intervention.
Okay, wait, let me be deeply cynical for a second here. Because the British Empire wasn't exactly operating out of pure, unadulterated altruism, weren't these missionaries just using their colonial privilege as a trump card to force their way into local disputes?
It is a completely valid question.
Alrighty.
And the historical record is clear. Their access to colonial power is exactly what made their interventions possible. The missionaries could and did leverage the threat of the British colonial police and courts.
So they were using the empire's weight.
Yes. We cannot untangle their actions from the reality of imperialism. However, their recorded motives in these specific local interventions were overwhelmingly humanitarian. They essentially repurposed the imperial shield to protect a demographic that had zero legal or social defense mechanisms.
Let's look at how that actually played out on the ground, because some of these stories are staggering. There's this account from 1879 involving missionary Jacob Chamberlain.
Oh, yes. This is a textbook example of dismantling the agricultural bonded labor system. Chamberlain discovered 11 Dalit families who were effectively enslaved to a dominant caste-ready landowner over a generational debt.
And the landowner basically manipulated the ledger, right? So the debt was mathematically impossible to pay off.
Right. The families were forced into relentless unpaid labor, and the situation escalated when the families converted to Christianity and simply requested Sundays off for worship.
And the landlord's response was brutal. He orchestrates the burning of their homes and physical beatings. Word of this reaches Chamberlain while he's actually conducting a Sunday service.
He and 6 colleagues immediately mount their horses, ride directly to the landowner's estate, and demand a face-to-face meeting.
Which the landowner complies with, presumably because of Chamberlain's colonial status.
Exactly. Chamberlain demands the ledger. He calculates the actual total of this insurmountable, multi-generational debt that had enslaved 11 families. It amounted to exactly 71 rupees.
71 rupees, that's it.
Yes. Chamberlain and his colleagues pooled their own money, paid the 71 rupees in cash on the spot, and legally severed the bond.
It just highlights how arbitrary the economic trap was. And it wasn't just labor disputes. We are looking at matters of literal life and death. Our sources detail this terrifying incident involving missionary Clayton.
Right.
A dominant caste landlord named Velu Mudaliar caught a Dalit woman picking fruit on his property. He struck her with such force that she died instantly. Mudaliar goes to the local village headman, and together they devise a plot to avoid colonial justice.
They bring in the victim's husband, Chellan, and the headman leverages the ultimate power imbalance. He offers Chellan 10 silver coins to take the blame.
Has compensation.
As a bribe, essentially. Because the alternative was, if Chellan refused, the headman promised to frame him for the murder of his own wife and ensure he was hanged.
I mean, that is not a negotiation. That's leveraging the state's monopoly on violence. Chellan, having absolutely no societal power, accepts the coins. But the headman's grandson inadvertently mentions that missionary Clayton happens to be staying the night in the local Dalit Palam.
And when Clayton discovers the truth, he bypasses the corrupt local headman entirely. By midnight, Clayton uses his authority to have the colonial police arrest the actual murderer.
Acts like this sent ripples through the region. We also see these symbolic physical assertions of advocacy. Like in Jamala Madadugu, there's an oral history involving a missionary who rode into a mob of dominant caste men who had tied up a Dalit convert.
Right, the Ben Cohen story. The missionary demands the man's release and then performs this highly specific action. He takes a metal coin from his pocket, physically bends it with his hands, and throws it at the mob's leaders.
He boldly declares, "These are my people. You bring this coin into its original shape and meet me."
Because, in a largely illiterate society, a strongly worded letter does nothing. You leave a tangible, undeniable physical marker of a threat. The bent coin was a contract of protection. But while physical protection ensured survival, survival doesn't equate to upward mobility.
Right, which brings us to the sword. Education. Because if you survive, you still have to navigate a society that wants to keep you at the bottom. The missionaries recognize this, leading to what we can call the education mission.
The philosophy here, heavily championed by Alexander Duff, was using English medium schools as a tool for evangelization. But the secondary consequence was monumental. It inadvertently ceded Dalit independence.
We have to remember that traditional Hindu education, like studying the Vedas or even basic literacy, was strictly forbidden for Dalits. Engaging with sacred texts could result in formal physical punishment. But the missionaries just discarded that framework.
They did. They opened schools and explicitly invited Dalit populations. And the fascinating part is the dual use of those thatched huts in the Palams. They became known as Badi and Gudi.
Right, a Badi is a school and a Gudi is a church. So by day, it's a classroom teaching literacy. By night, it's a theological gathering space.
This created a brand new public square for a community historically denied the right to congregate openly. They could finally gather, read, and learn.
And the institutional legacy of this is massive. St. Stephen's College in Delhi, founded in 1881, had a 30% Dalit enrollment. Madras Christian College, founded in 1837, had 35%.
And the Christian Medical College in Vellore, founded in 1900, had 25% Dalit enrollment. These were elite institutions.
And we absolutely have to mention the intersection of gender here. Dalit women faced a double burden, marginalized for their caste universally and marginalized for their sex locally.
The missionaries aggressively targeted this. They fought child marriage, abolished sati, and crucially, opened schools specifically for Dalit girls, teaching highly practical skills like nursing and sewing.
Giving them independent earning power. I love the quote from Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, who stated, "I honestly believe that the missionaries have done more for women's education in this country than the government itself."
The ripple effect was incredible. Even Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the pioneer of the Dalit movement, gained his foundational empowerment by attending a missionary-run school.
But this brings us to a really critical question. We have to confront the modern reality. If the missionaries provided all this education and advocacy, did it successfully erase the caste system for the Dalits who converted?
The sobering sociological reality based on our sources is, no, it did not.
Because you can change theology in an afternoon, but human sociology takes centuries, right?
Exactly. The egalitarian theology of Christianity hit the cultural bedrock of India, and the bedrock won. The church in India still struggles deeply with casteism today. Sources note separate entrances for Dalits in some churches, separate seating, the non-acceptance of Dalit priests, and even separate cemeteries.
It's heartbreaking. In 1994, the CBCI even issued a statement acknowledging this discrimination as a matter of shame and disgrace. And this is compounded by a legal catch-22, right? The reservation system.
Yes. The Indian Constitution abolished untouchability and created reservations, affirmative action quotas for scheduled castes. But the legal definition mostly restricts this to Hindus, Buddhists, and Sikhs.
So, because Christianity officially claims to be a casteless religion, Dalits who convert actually lose their government protection. By seeking spiritual equality, they surrender their legal safety net.
That is the exact paradox. The Sachar Committee report states only 9% of Indian Christians hold scheduled caste status. Dalit Christians are actively protesting this today, appealing to the government for equal benefits.
Because their lived reality of discrimination hasn't changed. To summarize this deep dive, Christian missionaries served as a massive catalyst for Dalit dignity. They provided the touchable body, fought systemic abuses, and opened doors to world-class education.
Yet it wasn't a magic wand. The cultural inertia of the caste system survived the theological shift, leaving Dalit Christians in a unique social and legal limbo today.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. If a radical change in religious worldview and exposure to modern education cannot fully erase the human instinct for social stratification, What does that tell us about the true underlying roots of human hierarchies?
It's a heavy question.
Is deep-seated inequality just a bug in our cultural programming? Or is it an inescapable human default that even our highest spiritual ideals can only manage, but never truly cure? Think about the invisible walls in your own world.
Thank you for joining us as we unpack these sources today.
Until next time, keep diving deep.